wages are going up now more quickly than prices. So I'm not denying there are
you
bills.
Acknowledge people are going to be
I
feeling
acknowledge
it still.
that with bills coming in, people see that rise, and that is a pressure. Making sure that interest rates are coming down, not going up, that makes a big difference for people. Wages going up higher than prices, but that is why it's so important we deliver on the national living wage to make sure people are better off. £1,400, quite a significant amount of money for millions of workers.
Keir Starmer served as secretary for an organization with open sympathies for the British Communist Party. This isn't speculation, it's documented fact about our current Prime Minister that the mainstream media refuses to discuss. In today's explosive interview on Sky News, we saw the mask slip again as Starmer was confronted with economic realities contradicting his rosy budget claims. The OBR itself forecasts people will feel worse off before better, yet Starmer continues peddling a narrative at odds with expert analysis.
I've looked at that forecast, and the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, actually says that people are going to feel worse off before they feel better off, and that all of that 500 quid at the end of the Parliament could wipe out anyway. You know that.
The forecast that on average people will feel £500 better off per year. We're bearing down on this. Well, Beth, look, £1,400 a year better off under the national living wage. That's real. That's coming into force today. I'm here at Nationwide. They get paid on April the 20th.
What else is he hiding? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. The carefully curated image of Sir Keir Starmer as a moderate, centrist politician begins to unravel when you examine his past. In 1989, as Britain was witnessing the collapse of Soviet communism, Starmer wasn't just sympathetic to socialist causes, he was actively serving as secretary of the Haldane Society of Socialist Lawyers.
Most people, they would say the cost of living crisis is ongoing and they feel the pressure financially. That's why it's so important that we make good on our pledge that people would feel better off. That's alongside the other work we've done. Interest rates have been cut 3 times since we've had a Labour government, so anybody with a mortgage knows that the rates are coming down. And of course, on average, and the national living wage going up today by an average of £1,400 is going to affect millions of people. So in their pay packet this month, and obviously for months to come, they will now be getting more money in.
This wasn't some casual affiliation. As Secretary, Starmer held a formal leadership position in an organization that openly expressed sympathies for the British Communist Party at a time when such allegiances were increasingly unfashionable. The autumn 1989 issue of Socialist Lawyer lists Starmer as the group's secretary, a fact that speaks volumes about his ideological commitments during those formative years. This was no mere student dalliance, but a serious political affiliation that shaped his worldview. The Haldane Society wasn't shy about its positions, putting forward resolutions at its annual general meeting that welcomed Soviet peace proposals and urged the Labour Party to adopt non-nuclear, non-aligned defense policy.
The economy is in a fragile position when it comes to weathering those headrooms, thanks to the crippling burdens imposed on businesses and households by this Labour government. Today's bills have risen for millions of families by more than £1,000. That, of course, affects pensioners too, who face rising energy bills while winter fuel payments have been snatched away. Working families will pay the price for all of this. While the jobs tax eats away at their pay packets, Labour are also stoking inflation. The OBR now expect inflation this year to be more than double their estimate at the last Conservative budget in March of last year.
These positions were far from mainstream, even within the Labour movement of the time. What makes this particularly revealing is how dramatically it contrasts with the public persona Starmer has constructed. The suited, measured politician who now presents himself as a pragmatic leader stands in stark opposition to the radical young lawyer who enthusiastically participated in an organization with communist sympathies. This duality raises serious questions about political authenticity and whether voters are seeing the real Keir Starmer or merely a manufactured image. Peter Hitchens offers a particularly insightful perspective on this contradiction contradiction. As a former revolutionary Marxist himself, Hitchens possesses a unique ability to spot the hallmarks of radical thinking that might escape the notice of mainstream journalists. His analysis suggests that many in the media have failed to recognize the coded language and ideological signals in Starmer's background, allowing him to rise through Labour's ranks without proper scrutiny of his true beliefs. Starmer's rise within the Labour Party may have been facilitated by a lack of understanding of his true ideological roots, Hitchens observes, highlighting how political radicals often maintain their core beliefs while presenting a more palatable public face. This observation isn't mere speculation, but comes from someone intimately familiar with the intellectual and organizational landscape of the British far left, a landscape Starmer navigated comfortably. Perhaps most telling is Starmer's own response when questioned about his radical past. Rather than distancing himself from his youthful associations, as many politicians do, Starmer has displayed a surprising enthusiasm for them. When asked in a 2020 New Statesman interview if he still considered himself a red-green, Starmer responded with an emphatic, "Yeah." He went further, declaring, "I don't think there are big issues on which I've changed my mind." This is not the cautious repositioning of someone who has moved to the center, but the confident assertion of someone whose fundamental beliefs remain intact. The red-green label is particularly significant. It represents a fusion of traditional leftist economics with modern environmental activism and identity politics, a blend that has become increasingly influential within progressive movements. Starmer's continued identification with this ideological current suggests that beneath the carefully tailored suits and measured speech lies a politician whose worldview was forged in radical circles and remains aligned with them. This matters because governance is not merely about competence, but about vision and values. If Starmer still fundamentally adheres to the red-green philosophy that guided his early career, voters deserve to know how these beliefs might translate into policy. Will the social radicalism and environmental zealotry associated with red-green politics shape his decision-making? The evidence suggests they might, despite efforts to project moderation. The pattern becomes clearer when we examine Starmer's approach to political communication more broadly. The same tendency toward concealment and strategic ambiguity that characterizes his relationship with his radical past appears in his handling of current policy questions. Just as he downplays his Haldane Society days while privately maintaining those connections, he makes economic promises without transparency about how they'll be funded. This brings us to the recent Sky News interview where Starmer was caught misrepresenting basic economic facts. This wasn't simply a politician being caught in a gaffe, but part of a consistent pattern of obscuring inconvenient truths, whether about his ideological history or his current policy proposals. The thread connecting these behaviors is a political strategy that relies on presenting voters with a carefully constructed image rather than an authentic political identity. Today's Sky News interview exposes a troubling pattern. When confronted about his £500 better off claim, Starmer desperately pivoted to the national living wage increase and falling interest rates. The interviewer wasn't fooled. The OBR's own assessment contradicted Starmer's economic fantasy. His response to Trump's potential tariffs was equally revealing. While acknowledging the threat, his vague promise of working on an economic deal offered little substance. These aren't mere communication failures. They're calculated deceptions from a man whose entire political identity is built on concealment. The question remains, can Britain afford a leader who consistently misrepresents reality while hiding his true ideological agenda?